What is going on, my death metal fiends out there? Today, I wish to bring to the table, to the conversation, 4 death metal adjacent records that don't get talked about nearly enough. I chose them because they're kind of weird, they're kind of not, they don't really fit into the round hole as easily as a lot of other bands that are getting talked about a lot. You know, we're going back to the 90s, reaching for the obscurities, pulling out things that are now classics that since then weren't really all that talked about, like Demilich. Nobody heard of Demilich for 15 years, and now all of a sudden Nesbitt is huge. Amazing record, amazing band, but there was a long period of time where nobody gave a fuck about Demilich. But so today I wanted to pick out these kind of oddball weirdos, just to kind of give you like a nice little handful of something to work on, that I really appreciate for being a little more bizarre, a little more avant-garde, left of center, because that's really my passion. Like, I listen to a lot of stuff that's meat and potatoes, right down the middle. It's fine. I love a lot of that kind of stuff, but some of my favorite records are the stuff that are so odd that they blazed a new trail and really knocked down those walls for a lot of other bands to do some experimentation and like playing with avant-garde kind of ideas. So I should probably turn it up a little bit. Actually, behind me playing is the first one I wanted to talk about, and this is Sweden's Eructation. So this is a compilation of their 3 demos put out by Memento Mori, a label which is doing lots and lots of great work, just like your Vic Records, The Crypt, stuff like that. Doing good stuff. So Eructation were active from 1990 to 1997, and this compiles 3 of their demos, which were released between 92 and 95. Now, they are from Sweden, so there is a inherent sense of melodicism in the guitars that is super competent and easy to get your toes into when you first give it a listen. But it's a little bit later in that kind of like 3-year period where we went from like 91, where all those killer death metal records came out, but it got a little bit weird, and I feel like these guys must have gotten a hold of Nocturnus's The Key. Like, now that I'm more familiar with Nocturnus, I'm realizing like where I heard their influence in other places but didn't quite realize like what I was hearing. So like it really clicked with me once I heard Nocturnus is the Key. I was like, okay, yeah, Eructation, we're totally doing stuff like that. There's a lot of like kind of frantic, kind of half melodic, half just like staticky kind of sour note guitars going on, and these kind of like off rhythm kind of deals. It's really, really thunderous and pummeling. The vocalist just has a commanding sound to him. It actually kind of reminds me a bit of that new Blood Incantation. Their vocals at first were kind of hard to swallow for me, but listening to more and more stuff like this makes me realize, like, wow, you know what, I don't mind it that much. It kind of gives the instrumentation an easier passage to, you know, the forefront of what you're hearing. And I appreciate that about it. I think it takes the smart vocalist to exist and be powerful, but also kind of let enough room for the instrumentation that's just complex and challenging and driving everything to make the song what it is. And, you know, these guys are really doing that, and I think that's one of those old tropes that Blood Incantation is kind of borrowing from. So I kind of wanted to bring albums like this to the limelight so that you guys know that Blood Incantation isn't just out there to fucking play the next Morbid Angel or Immolation. They've got their roots out there deep into some deep cuts like Eructation, if I'm being honest. So killer compilation. I don't imagine this is very rare. I think it came out in 2016. The first 3 songs are fucking amazing. They're really well recorded, but then you get into the demo 93, which was previously unreleased, so you wouldn't have it if you didn't have this. The sound quality kind of takes a turn. It's not quite as great as the first 3 tracks, but there's enough variation in the song style that it makes it really fun to listen to, and it kind of gets, it's kind of easy to like set into that next like sound quality or sound picture, if you will. It plays really interestingly. It's not like a barrage of stuff that's kind of easy to get bored with easily. And I find that a lot of times I'll get these compilations and I'm like, okay, yeah, I understand what that band is like, but to actually sit through the whole compilation of 3 or 4 demos, live tracks, and promos and stuff is kind of like a long drink. So this plays really, really well. It's a lot of fun, challenging. It's got a lot of depth to it, and it kind of plays off of a lot of that Floridian kind of technicality. So next, this band fucking rules. I played this in the background of one of my videos, so you may have remembered it from them, but I'm going to take a chance to try and get you to listen to this again. From Austria, Korova, with A Kiss in the Charnel Fields. This is their debut, and it came out in 1995 on Napalm Records. Fine purveyor of great riffs. First thing I'll get out of the way is that price of admission on this album is completely worth it for the very first riff on the album. Oh, holy shit. They do this, like, I guess for a band to debut with something so well thought out, so experimental, but to have such strength in their personality and stepping away from what was normal and trying out some new ideas, it's incredible to hear what these young guys were doing in regard to how absolutely weird it is. They have a way of harmonizing their guitars, and it just sounds so sour and so wrong. And there's something about that with me where instead of something sounding like sweet and melodic like a normal Swedish band would sound, this kind of band to me is like the antithesis of that. It's dissonant and it sounds wrong. And to me, when death metal does that kind of thing, I love melodicism and I love that kind of stuff from Sweden and whatnot. Any band can be melodic, but like when it sounds completely opposite and it sounds wrong and caustic, to me it just kind of hits that much harder. And that's where a lot of that experimentation and like avant-garde style that I love comes from with a lot of bands, whether it's pop bands like XTC, weirdo like goth black metal like Vedbo and Zenda, and strange avant-garde death metal bands like Korova. There is a lot of kind of orchestral, symphonic kind of pomp to this album too. They definitely have this kind of like grandiose sort of theatrical gesture sort of style that I think you'd be familiar with if you like stuff like Arcturus. Kind of like there's like kind of like a vampiricism to it in a way that like Castlevania kind of approaches that. But yeah, this is a one-of-a-kind album. You're never going to hear another thing like this. And I dare you to check out this band, Korova, Kiss in the Charnel Fields. They did another follow-up album called Dead Like an Angel in, I believe, 96, maybe 97. Then they changed their name to Korova Kill, and they released a way more black metal record on Redstream Records. And that album was really, really fun, but that has a lot more in common with bands like Dotheimsgard, maybe later era Abigor. In fact, there is some lineage here, being that these guys are from Austria, that can be tied back to Abigor and I think Summoning. I believe the drummer who played in Korova Kill and maybe on this one also played in the later Abigor stuff, if that does anything for you. But this thing is so fucking weird. Long song titles. It's just got this like pompous sort of poeticism to it that follows through into the music. And like some of the riffs are like okay, but some riffs just stand out so much because of the weird harmonizing style that the guitar players have. It's just beyond bizarre. So the next thing I have for you is Occult, The Enemy Within. Not often talked about, and I feel like maybe a lot of people think that this band is kind of a stinker in a way. Not really well reviewed on Metal Archives from what I've seen. And I'm kind of surprised. I mean, this isn't amazing or great or anything, but I want to highlight these kind of more mediocre bands before they get forgotten about, because there's a lot of weird ideas that can be borrowed from in here, and it's just kind of fun to have that expansive knowledge of a genre rather than just sitting on the same 10 bands that wrote amazing albums. The Enemy Within was their second album, and I think it came out in 96. Yeah. They were from Denmark, and I don't think there's any other members that went on to do anything else, so like associated acts wouldn't really do anything for you. But this is one of those albums where a band was kind of coming out of thrash and kind of learning how to play more death metal-y kind of stuff. It's highly influenced by Death's Human, maybe a little bit of Symbolic, probably some, what's the, I can never think of the, Leprosy. A little bit of that, so like you can definitely hear a lot of death in this, but it's a lot more like thrash based. These guys, like, to pigeonhole these guys, if I had to, I'd have to call them kind of a black thrash band. But there's moments where they get so intense and so like experimental, where it sounds pretty similar to a lot of proto death metal kind of stuff of that time period. So it's pretty easily forgotten, having come out in 1996 out of Europe on a little known label called Foundation 2000. But it's a fun little album. I picked it up in a Co-op Records about 10 years ago. But yeah, they are pretty fucking solid. I put this on pretty often, and I'm always kind of surprised. I'm like, damn, why don't I listen to this more often? This lyric sheet, not a whole lot. I'm not sure if there's a vinyl reissue or whatever out there. Probably not, because you know a lot of people don't know about this fucking band. Their first album, Enemy Within, was a little bit more of a black metal record, and I'm honestly kind of not into it. These guys were kind of a wild card mixed bag, but really fun listen if you want something a little bit different off the beaten path. Now for the last one, an absolute fucking mighty crushing banger, Revenant with Prophecies of a Dying World. I was not familiar at all with this band until I walked into a Half Price Books about 2 years ago. And a lot of you probably remember that giant haul of like old school death metal CDs that I found there. But I was super surprised that I had never heard of this band whatsoever. No one ever talked about this that I had heard of. These guys are from New Jersey. They came up alongside bands like Deteriorate and Incantation, a lot of other like East Coast death metal kind of stuff. I don't think members really went on to do much of anything else. I believe there's like a live member of Incantation or something like that, but it doesn't really matter. And when I paid $60 for this, by the way, so it's pretty fucking rare. It came out on Nuclear Blast in '91. And at first I was like, all right, this could be $60 good. Put it in, and I honestly didn't really care for it. It didn't fucking blow me away like I thought it would, but that's my fault. That was the expectation. I put it away until just a couple of weeks ago. It's kind of starting to feel a little summery around here. Spring is here. I'm working out in the yard, and I'm feeling more like wearing shorts and digging in the garden. Probably see my dirt underneath my fingernails. Anyways, back to Revenant. The shit is great. It's very, very riffy. Also very of the time period, coming out of a thrash metal kind of period, moving into death metal. It's kind of clumsy in a couple of areas that I think is where I lost interest when I first put this in. Trying to add a little bit of diversity to it. They try have like these kind of more slow, drawn out kind of parts, and be kind of like evil and spooky, which don't always work on me. But the intense parts on this are fucking absolutely raging. It's really brilliantly recorded. It sounds great. I thought it might have been a Scott Burns job, but it isn't. But you know, it sounds great for what it is. Coming out on Nuclear Blast in 1991, and I'm really surprised. I'm really sad that I didn't heard about this album until just a couple of years ago. But it was fun to pick it up just out of the blue and give it a shot. And I wound up falling for it a couple of weeks ago. So, Prophecies of a Dying World, Revenant, worth your time for sure. Probably not going to find a hard copy of it anytime soon. So check out at least 2 of these 4. If you have to not do all 4 of them, I understand. Time is commodity in these days, but if you're quarantined and you're just fucking sitting around listening to what you're listening to, step outside of your comfort zone. Check out Revenant, Occult, Korova, or Eructation. Great shit. Thanks again for watching. Here to support death metal with all of you guys. Have a good time.